Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and we just did that video on how to get started welding. So if you haven't seen that yet, make sure you go back and watch it. So we're going to take some coupons, and these are just some 1-inch strips we had done, and I just sawed them up to roughly 3-inch little pieces. And these are great things to just learn on, fairly inexpensive. We use a local company called Metal Supermarkets. So they're easy to cut. Once you have the strip, you can either use a saw or an ink grinder with a cutoff wheel. But little coupons like this are great. So when you're doing T-joints, we do some open corner, and we can do some, what sounds like a wrong term, vertical down. Right? I prefer vertical down versus vertical up, but there's times when you have to do it. So remember, this is hobby welding, this is garage welding. I'm not teaching you how to go get your certification. So let's dive in. All right, and as always, you know, we're a Rockmount affiliate, so all the welding supplies and everything you see here, all can be found at Rockmount. I'll leave a link in the description below. So let's dig in. All right, so good as place as any to start. So we talked about the flat work the other day. So today we're going to start with T-joints. Now for a T-joint, obviously we can't come straight down. So we're going to come in at a 45. So it's going to come in at that angle. Now just like before, you're going to come in and you're going to tip it back about 15 degrees. Your gun's going to come in at a 45 and then back 15 degrees to fill that in. Now for this, we're going to start with the settings we had on our last video. Alright, so nothing fancy, just the strips we talked about. So what we're going to do is we're going to tack these. Now these are short enough that we won't have to tack in the center. But I'll show you a way to work around that as well, because if you get a big long piece, you have to tack in the center. You won't always be able to just tack it on the ends. Okay, so we're going to tack a couple pieces together. And I'm just going to use a little, it's called a 1-2-3 block, but just find yourself a little block of steel so you don't actually weld through your cable. We're going to come in on the very end and just give it a little tap. And if for any reason you want to adjust it, now is the time. I'm just going to give it a little bump on the trigger. So a little trick on tacking, if it's pulling heavy on one side, tack it heavier on the far side. If both tacks are on the inside, it's really going to pull. It's starting to pull right now, but for this, it'll be okay. Now, if you're afraid of getting spatter on your blocks or anything, just spray that down with some anti-spatter spray and you'll be good. Now, from our last video, we're still running the same settings for 1/8 inch material. 18.2 and 293 on the wire feed speed. And our gas flow is still at 30. Now just so I'm not scooting this all over the table, I'm just going to put this in a drill vise. Just make sure that if there's any paint on the bottom of it, it's all ground off so you get a good ground. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of arcing between the table and the vise. We're going to come in, but we're going to tilt it back a little bit too. So a 45, and then we're going to push it. If you're in flux, you'd pull it. I do want to take a minute just to talk about your lead. So when you're welding, if this thing is all knotted up, jammed up, you're going to have some bad wire feed issues. Right? So make sure this is a good loop so the wire can feed through it. 45, drop it back about 15 degrees, and same thing, I'm going to walk it in a circle. I'm going to go up and down. Right? So I'm going to give the top of that T a little bit of love, and I'm going to come down to the bottom. I'm not going to just keep it stuck in the root, right? So it's going to be that small circle that you practice on the flat. Practice your weld once. Make sure that you can move exactly where you want to go. Now I'm looking at the toes of the weld. It looks like they're in there good. Doesn't look like it's undercut on the edges. Doesn't look like it's cold lapped over. Kind of like seeing a little bit of the flow, right? Everybody kind of likes that. You can see where I started. Now let's say you got a tack to part in the middle. You have no, it's just too long. So you have to put a tack in the middle. So ideally you want a little tack like that. So ideally try to put as small of a tack as you can in there. And it gets a little larger. It's a little larger. That's going to cause a big hump right in the middle of your weld. So let me show you how to take care of that. You get two options. If this is a real long run, run up to it. And then on the other side, run again. You're going to have a start and stop in the middle. You would start, back up into the tack, and then go again. Or what we can do is we can feather this down a little bit. We can grind a little bit of this off, smooth it out, so it's still a tack, but it's not as noticeable, right? So I'm going to put a larger tack on this side, just so I can show you both options. Alright, now we're just going to take a flap wheel, and we're just going to take a little bit out of the tack. Also, when you're welding, clip this little ball off the end every time. Now that tack in the center was probably mediocre on the size, right? Would have probably been better to feather that one and not the other. But that was a restart in the middle. If you're going to weld like that, put just a little bit bigger tack in there. The minimal point, if that tack was any smaller, we'd have just welded over or feathered it. Alright, so the one that we feathered, for the next one, I'm going to speed up just a little bit in this area. I actually went a little too fast through the whole thing. I should have dwelled a little bit longer. But this is where that tack was. You can see a little bit of a hump there. So the toes here can be wetted in a little bit better. So just do your 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 as you go through. Now for the outside joints, we're going to use our block again. And basically it's a 1-inch block and a 1-inch piece. And we're just going to come in here and okay, so just like before, when you start doing our open corners, I'm going to exaggerate here just a little bit. Right, so there's our open corner. It'll be tacked, tacked. And what we're going to do is manipulate it. We're going to come to the corner, 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 and just making a small, I guess if you learn cursive, a small like cursive E, right, all the way. Now you could just like a zigzag as well, because it's so small that I don't know that you would see it. And when you do the outside corners, you know, this little groove here, if you dwell too long, you're going to blow right through it. You open up a keyhole that you can't fill. You want a little bit of an opening, but not much. Now typically I'll turn the welder down just a little bit. We're running 290. I'll probably back it down in that 260 range. So same thing. We're going to go vertical and just tip back a little bit. So as you go across, you want to walk the edge, and then you'll see it just starts to penetrate on the other side. Alright, so the next part of this, we've done open corner. Now we're going to do vertical passes. And I typically like to go vertical down. I myself don't have much luck with going vertical up. It seems to want to fall out as I'm welding. Could be my inexperience. I'll be the first to tell you that. But we're going to use the joints that we did the open corners on. And what we'll do is the same thing. We'll point straight in, drop back, and we'll go from corner to corner as we're walking it down. So we will have to turn this down a little bit. So I'm going to go down to about 200 on the wire feed versus 290. Now I'm going to go down on the wire feed. So I'm going to go down into the 260 range from 290. And that's just to keep it from drooping or anything else. But you'll have to try this in your machine just to see what it's capable of. Alright, so we're going to walk into the corner here. Alright, so I think that laid in very well. Obviously very hot, as you can still see. I think what we'll do also is we'll cut one of these. I'll do both of them. So I'll try a vertical up, and I'll show you how, at least how it comes out for me. So after I slowed down, after I changed wires, I slowed down quite a bit and able to get rid of that, right? So just back and forth. It will hump up a little bit more on the vertical up. You can make it work. I prefer the vertical down though. All right, so I'll be the first to tell you, You're going to make some bad welds. You're going to make some welds that I can very easily get rid of this. You'd never see it. But not every weld's going to be your best. You lay one down, try to figure out what you did, try to make the next one even better. It's a progressive thing. Every time you do this, make some notes so that you know what you did. So 6 months down the road, you come back to it. What did I do? Then you know, right? Always progress. So let's cut one of these and see how they look. I cut them and polished them a little bit. Now the more you polish it, the better off this etching will look. And I'll credit Welding Tips and Tricks as where I'll say who taught me how to do this from watching Jody's videos. So now you can always use navel jelly, but I just went out and bought a little of this ferric chloride, and that'll eventually make that little weld nugget pop up. And you can already, I don't know if you can see, but it's already starting to kind of pop a little bit. Okay, so you can see here the weld nugget, how it's outlined there. So that's the penetration on that weld from the T-joint. So this is a vertical up. You can see the nugget there. And this is from the open corner. And the more you polish these, the more it pops. Same thing here, vertical down, there's the nugget. There's the open corner. There's a small little, where the corner is where it didn't get into. Then the T-joint, you can, I don't know if you can see the corners, but if you just polish these up, the more you polish these, the better off they are. And then you can see how your penetration is. You can make a change. It shows up better in person than it does on camera, but you can make a change. Take a look at the penetration and see how it looks. Ultimately, that's what it's going to tell you. The fact that we've dug into both of the pieces fairly well, right? So you don't see any penetration, then you know you have an issue with the joint. I think I still prefer the vertical down versus the vertical up, but it's up to you to decide. All right, so we went through there and we did some T-joints, we did some open corner, some vertical up, vertical down, and then we even sectioned them and we put a little ferric acid on them to make the weld nugget pop. You can also use navel jelly. Now I'll be the first one to give all the credit to Jody over Welding Tips and Tricks. He's the one I learned that from, because I wasn't doing that until I seen that. And well, you know, when you see the value in something, you need to use it and you should give credit to it. So give that weld a section, because you don't really know what you have there, or even if you're getting penetration in the joint. Look at our last video. We showed you how to calculate your wire feed and your amperage and some tips on welding flat. They all apply here. But the big thing is, try to be consistent as you can with your wire and your material thickness while you're trying to develop that skill. You don't want to keep introducing variables and then not be able to figure out why it's not working. Right? So as always, we're an affiliate of Rockmount Welding Alloys. So if anything you've seen here, go down to our description. It's all there as well. So I'll see you on the next installment of this fabrication series. So until then, I'll see you in one of these videos that pop up. This is Jeepingmo.